Hi guys, my name is Kenzie and I'm going to be your watercolor instructor today. And we're going to be painting this buzzing bee portrait, and I am super excited about this because this is going to be our very first painting together. And I wanted to pick something a little on the easier end, kind of warm you guys up to it and get you excited hopefully for the rest of the subscription. And yeah, let's just jump into it and get painting. Okay, so what you'll see in front of me is my setup. I have my color, my mixing palette, I have my page taped onto some cardboard so I can move it around. I have used painter's tape to tape it to this board. I have two water cups. I have one for my cool colors, one for my warm colors, and I have a towel to tap. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna do my background first. And I want this to be very bright and airy, so I'm gonna pick my ultramarine. So I am going to put some water on my palette. I'm gonna tap it because that's really wet. I'm gonna pull some ultramarine into my mixing palette, like so. Okay, so because this is a large area, I'm gonna want to use the wet on wet technique, which is applying a wet surface onto another wet surface. For this case, my wet surface will be my water and my blue. So I'm gonna really quickly apply water first to my page, working really fast, trying to not go over any of the ink. If you do, it's really not the end of the world. Working quickly. Okay, I'm gonna do this section and maybe do the bottom when I'm done with this section. Okay, I'm gonna start with this so that the top part doesn't completely dry off. I'm gonna apply my first layer of blue with that ultramarine color, and I'm gonna go side to side, moving it around, maybe adding different darknesses and depth to one part. I'm gonna mix a little bit of indigo to it. Again, I told you guys in my other video, I love, 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 love indigo. And mix it into pretty much everything. Okay, I'm gonna really quickly go right here where the wings are, going down. Again, you'll see I'm moving really quickly. I'm not taking my time at all because I did not want this to dry, because if you do, you're gonna be left with streaks everywhere, kind of jumping around, because I don't want this water to dry. And because I applied water first, I basically bought myself time to allow soft blends of blue to kind of happen versus the wet on dry technique. It would just dry and then some streaks and stuff could appear. Okay, I totally just painted the blue into my into my petal. So I'm just scooping up this color with just water, tapping the blue away on my napkin. Silly me, I got distracted in my thought. Okay, cool. So definitely pay attention. Okay, so you'll see how right here my line has already dried, and I don't want to have two different lines or shades of blue, so I'm gonna go in the middle just using water, kind of breaking up this color as I go. And that way I'm just using water to kind of push and move around this blue to break up this harsh line so that I can continue to have a very smooth blend of blue going all the way down my piece of paper. And that is because up here I applied water first. Down here I didn't apply water. So now I'm doing the wet on dry technique. Because it's a smaller area, I don't necessarily need to worry about it drying because it's, again, a small area. Okay, tap away some pigment there because it's very strong. So you'll see this area was starting to be a different darkness and depth than this. So I'm just tapping my napkin to kind of lift and absorb some of that blue. Okay, and I'm gonna want to blend out this part right here again. Maybe add a little bit of color in here. Okay, cool. Should I miss? Okay, so let's continue the sky down here. I'm just gonna do a wet on dry. I'm not going to worry about putting water down first again because this is a small area to cover. I'm not really worried about this line right here drying before I can get over here. Okay, cool. So now this blue is looking a little harsh, so I'm just using water to scoop up the blue that was just right here in the corner, moving it around because, again, the goal here is to have my background be very soft and airy and not too in your face at all. The main focus, I want it to be the flowers, the bee, not the sky. So I'm using a lot of water versus blue pigment. And because I'm feeling a little crazy, I'm gonna tap different points to kind of make it look like some sky. Blend out different parts. I'm just using water at this point to kind of lift up some paints, a different part to kind of create the illusion of a cloud. So this technique that I'm doing right here by lifting and pulling, and see how you're starting to get white spots, this only works. This was still pretty wet, so I'm actually able to still go in and scoop some of that color. I'm just rolling my brush around in a circular motion, picking and pulling. You'll see I'm just using water. I'm tapping away the blue on my napkin as I'm going and picking up pigment, moving different points. I'll even go in and shadow some of the clouds with some darker color as well to kind of just give some more depth to the cloud. I'll do that over here. I'm going to use indigo. That's not indigo. Right here is indigo. And just kind of give it a little bit of depth underneath, a little bit of shadow to make my highlight of the cloud pop a little bit more. Maybe add some indigo at the top here because this looks really light. Let's capitalize on this already being really light by adding a little bit of shadow to it. Okay, cool. This can be our first layer. Actually, I'm gonna add a little bit of indigo right here too. Sorry. I'm looking and I'm seeing where some of my pages, like right here, is like already a lot lighter than different parts. So I'm just gonna emphasize that as being a cloud. Again, by adding a little bit of shadow and depth to it. I'm gonna blend out by using just water, rolling my brush around. Perfect. Okay, cool. So I have this little nifty-difty dryer right here that I am going to use to speed up the process of my background because I want to start painting my flower and my bees and stuff. But if I start applying color right here and my sky's still wet, everything is going to bleed and blend, and we don't want that. We want to start layering, so I'm going to dry this. Okay, this is dry. I am loving how this turned out, how I have some clouds, how I have my shadow of my indigo color, how I've used my ultramarine, how you have like some brighter blues. Let me move this so there's less shadow. You'll see I have some lighter blues, my shadows, my highlights. I think this turned out great. So let's get painting the main parts of it. So you'll see right here how I have some circles. This is what we're gonna use as our white space. Now white space is pretty simple. It's when we just leave little gaps in our page and let the paper kind of shine through. This creates depth and dimension in our piece. So we are gonna leave these little circles white. So in my palette already, I have raw umber and burnt umber. Those are the two different brown colors. So with watercolor, you always wanna start with your lighter colors first versus your darker colors. So I'm gonna pick up this raw umber first. I'm gonna transfer this to my palette real quick, mix it up. And because I'm feeling a little wild, I'm gonna add a little bit of cadmium red in it. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna put wet on dry. So I'm applying my brown directly to the page. So you'll see how I'm moving around these circles. And I'm gonna do this fairly quickly. I'm using the very tip of my brush. If I go over the lines here, I'm not gonna worry too much at all. So you'll see here I missed a part of my sky. I didn't go that close to the ink. So I'm just gonna cover that part with my brown. And I'll show you how to cover those lines. Okay, cool. So once I'm feeling pretty good about this, that's when I can go in with that burn umber. And I can tap different points. And with, again, the wet on wet technique, that's how you can create some really soft and nice blends by just moving around and manipulating the colors. So the technique that I'm using right now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but it's called alla prima, is when you're moving color around that's already on your sheet of paper, moving and manipulating it to go where you want it to go. Okay, cool. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I'm going to dry that. So while this is drying, I've added a little bit of purple to it and a little bit more of that darker. Let's add a little bit of purple. The purple is because I'm going to shadow different points. There we go. That's a nice color. Okay, so I'm now going to go around again. And do you see how this color just kind of sits on top? It's exactly what we want. This is our second layer. I'm going to go around kind of where my ink marks are to kind of disguise that. Now the key here is to make sure when you're layering, you want to see still the first layer that you put down. You don't want to completely cover this again, otherwise you're just covering the color and not creating depth. So I'm going around again, touching it up with that darker shade of brown, and I feel pretty good with that, so I am going to dry it. So I just added a little bit of black to it again, to my brown over there. I'm going to add a little bit more. And I am going to just touch probably a smaller amount of the page, again, to give it a little bit more depth. See how the color just kind of sits on top of it? And again, I'm not trying to perfectly stay within the lines that I've outlined. It was just there to kind of help us a little bit. Let's go a little crazy, mix a little bit more black in, and just hit it up one more time. Do 3 or 4 layers here. Yeah, that's perfect. There we go. Looks pretty good to me. You can see how because I've left some white space, again, it just adds that extra layer of depth and dimension. Okay, so when I'm painting this, I'm kind of thinking about the color wheel and how I want my colors to kind of sit here. So what I have in my head right now is purples and yellows, and I'm trying to figure out if I want this to be yellow or purple, but I'm thinking because I want the bumblebee to stand out, maybe I'll do this purple to, again, make it stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to mix up a really light wash of purple. Okay, so I'm going to start with a really light wash, and I'm kind of going to take this layer by layer. And I find a little fun trick that you can do is have another paintbrush that's damp right next to you. And when you're done painting this, you can just scoop up your color at different points right here, and that automatically gives your piece depth and dimension. So because I want this to dry, I'm going to move on to this petal right here. Oh, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use a little bit of that indigo color I love so much and mix it with my purple, and I'm going to touch right here to just give it a natural shadow. Bring it in. There we go. Okay, cool. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so let's bring this in. My purple. I'm gonna go in with that indigo blend, touch up top, drag it out a little bit, maybe shadow right here and have this one be under. And then I'm gonna use my damp brush to again scoop up different points. Okay, moving on into here. And you're seeing I'm kind of going into the brown ever so slightly as well. Okay, then I got my indigo color. I'm gonna touch up here, bring it down and around, like right here, to kind of create a shadow. I'm gonna rinse off my brush, tap my napkin, and I'm gonna scoop up some of this purple color as well. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna come over here now. Again, going into the purple a little bit, using water now, because I'm finding my bristles are separating, to kind of move this purple around. Okay, mixing in that indigo color. Oh, that's dark. And scooping up some color. Okay, cool. And now we'll go right here. Yeah, so this is dry, so now I can go in my center one, pulling it into the brown, bringing it down. Scooping up the color with just water. Scoop. Grab my indigo, touch the top. I'm even going to bring a little bit of shadow down here at the bottom. Okay, remembering to scoop different parts. Okay, cool. I feel like this one's really faint, so I'm going to add a little bit more purple to it. Okay, so let's move on to this one.
My bristles were starting to separate there, so I dipped my brush into my water so I can drag down my color, tap my napkin, pick it up. There's my indigo color, tapping that in right here on the sides.
See here, because I jumped around from petal to petal, that I already have kind of a natural crease between them where each layer is standing out, versus if I was to paint all of it one color at once, it would all just kind of blend and not have such divine lines between as well. So I think by looking at this, I want to add a little bit more depth and shadow towards the center. So this is when I want to let my first layers all dry, and now that it's dry, I'm going to go in again with this brown color that I had. I'm going to mix up a little bit of purple and black to kind of create a lot more of a shadow to it. Maybe I'm going to introduce a little bit indigo as well. Yeah, there we go. That indigo, I'm telling you, it's the best. So I'm going to go in and just kind of tap around the bottom And also and I'm tapping a little bit into the purple line as well, just to kind of make it look like it's not such a harsh line between them. Just kind of blends the petals out with the center. Tapping different points. Okay, cool. So now I want to create a little bit of depth between the petals, but I'm thinking what I want to do is put my first layer of the stem on. So I'm gonna mix up a blend of sap green. Ooh, is that a drip? My sap green. And I'm gonna mix it in with the sky color that I had already mixed previously. And I'm gonna mix it in with this burnt umber color that I used for my center as well. Oh, it's so pretty. I'm kind of gonna mix those colors around, and I'm gonna apply my first layer of green. It's a very natural looking color, which I like. I find that mixing browns with any type of green gives it a more natural tone to it. Like an earthy tone almost. Okay, and then I'm gonna mix in a little bit more of that brown to the green, and I'm gonna tap around different points as well. I added some indigo to kind of towards where the leaf would connect and come down and up, shadow a little bit right under here where the petal is. And I am gonna let that dry. I'm gonna come in again when it's dry, layer again, different points. Kind of repeating where I just put the shadow. Okay, cool. So you'll see here I did like maybe 2 or 3 layers of this brown. I even just held the dryer on top of it while it was drying, just to kind of create a little bit more depth where the leaf and the stem were connecting right here. Okay, cool. So now let's concentrate on adding a little bit of depth to the center here. I'm gonna mix up again that indigo color with my purple. I'm gonna just hit the top of it. And then I'm gonna get rid of that color in my brush, and I'm gonna use just water to blend this out and drag it down. I'll even touch different parts of my watered down color, just like that. And I'm gonna repeat this. So I'm gonna get rid of the color on my brush, tap my napkin, drag it down. I'm gonna move on to this one. I'm even gonna shadow a little bit down here. But I'm gonna blend it out with just water, blending it out with just water right here. I want to do this one really shadowy. Shadowy. Okay, tapping, dragging it out. Using just water to blend it out. Using just water. I didn't do this one. Going in now right there. Okay, cool. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so let's move on to the bee. So I'm gonna mix up, let's do like a really bright yellow. And believe it or not, I'm gonna mix this yellow in with the green color in the brown that I just used for right here. I'm gonna put a lot of yellow in it. That's like a really great dulled down yellow. And I'm gonna put my first layer down. Just kind of blotching it around. I'm also leaving a little bit of white space as well. Not afraid of leaving white space. And I'm not doing like a perfect line. Like you'll see how when I get close to the edge, I'm kind of just moving my brush around and perfectly going over that ink line as well, going into the sky just a little bit. This part does not have to be perfect at all. And then again, I'm gonna get rid of the color on my brush, tap my napkin, and I'm gonna scoop up some color at the top to give this little bee some depth and dimension. And whenever I see that I'm just moving yellow around, I'm gonna get rid of the yellow with water, tap my napkin, and then I can go in and keep lifting. I'm gonna add a little bit more, maybe brightness to this. Yeah, there we go. Cool. We're gonna let this dry because if I add black to this, it's just gonna go and blend like that, which we do not want. Okay, cool. So why don't we do, I feel like a yellow flower right here will look really pretty. So let's go in now. And you'll see how I'm just blotting my brush around. I'm leaving some white space. I'm not worried about going into the sky that much or on top of my ink mark as well. Going in now with a little bit of a darker color to it, tapping around so I have a soft blend. There we go. Where's my dryer? So you'll see now I'm going in with a darker color. The key here is leaving in the original yellow as well. Highlighting, picking up different points. And because we want a shadow, I mixed a little bit of brown with the yellow, and I'm gonna go in and shadow different points of this. Again, and I'm trying to look at my piece right here. I see that you can kind of see my ink marks. So I'm gonna tap just right there to kind of help blend that out so you don't really see my lines. Right here, you can see my lines pretty bad, right there. Okay, and then I'm gonna apply a lavender over here as well. Doing the same technique, blotting it around. Trying to not get it over the line here. If you do go over a little bit, you can just use water to kind of smooth it out and pick it up and get rid of it. There you go. Okay, so this is my first layer. And in order to kind of layer on top and create depth like this one, you have to kind of dry the layers, or you can move on. So why don't I show you that? Why don't we move on to this one over here? And I'm gonna mix that cadmium red and permanent rose color with some purple. And then I'm gonna do this one, that color right here. So I'm gonna let this one dry and I'm gonna bounce back in between both of them to create my layers. To show you those that don't have a dryer, all you have to do is simply just have a little patience and bounce around. Okay, cool. Tap different points. Okay, so while I'm waiting for those to dry, I can go in. Oh no, I spilled it right here. Okay, let's pick this up. Using just water, tapping my napkin, moving it around. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna mix black with a lot of water to make like a gray color. And I'm gonna go in and do my first layer of gray. And I'm gonna go around to the yellow. And then I'm gonna do the wet on wet technique right here because I feel like that would be best. So while that gray is still wet, I'm then gonna go and touch different points, and I'm gonna leave like a little bit of highlight towards this part of the bee. Like my light zone's gonna be right here. So I'm gonna leave parts of it pretty wet and light. I'm gonna scoop it up, move it around. Using the very tip of my brush to go in and make the legs and the antlers, antennas. I'm gonna go in while it's still wet, the gray, the darker, and make the black, sorry, and make different parts of it dark. Okay, and then I'm gonna mix a little bit of that black with the blue with like a lot of water, and that's gonna be the color that I'm gonna be using for my wings. And you'll see here I went over a little bit the sky into the wings, and I'm gonna break up this color by just using a damp brush and just kind of scooting it away. Get out of here. There we go. Lifting it up, using a gray color, moving it around. There we go. Just tapping different points as well. Let that dry. Scoop, scoop. I want to shadow a little bit where this line is, where it kind of crosses over. Okay, that's very pigmented, so I'm going to go in with just water and spread this out. Oh, that looks beautiful. Okay, so for the wings, I'm going to go in now with that same color, and I'm going to do like little detailed lines. And they're just kind of like squiggly lines. To represent what a wing would look like. I'm not gonna be too detailed with it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna fill out this bottom color. Again, I'm gonna try and shadow it a little bit right under where the petal is. And just repeating what you did on this side, just mixing up some different shades of green and just going in and tapping different points of it to kind of just give it a little bit more depth and dimension. Okay, so to give this a little bit more depth as well, now that it's a little bit dry, that actually looks pretty good how it is though. I want to add a little bit more shadow to it. So I'm going to lift up that indigo color with the purple and that cadmium color that I had going. I'm going to touch different points of it. Do the same with this side. Okay. I have a paint spot. So I love how this turned out. I don't think I'm gonna add, or maybe a little bit more shadow here actually. Now that I'm looking at it with the bee, make it a little bit darker. Some spots. Yeah, that looks good. Now you can kind of go around your piece, just add any fine details that you see. Any extra shadowing that you want to do. I feel like I want to add a little bit of a leaf right here. So you can go ahead and stop if you're not comfortable not going through the outline. But I'm gonna add a little bit of a leaf right here. Because I felt like that just looks a little funny. There we go. I'm gonna freehand another leaf right here. So I'm using the very tip of my brush. And going around to create a little bit of a leaf shape. Shadow a little bit more. Maybe do a little leaf over here. Mixing up different green colors. Add any final details that you may want to add. Add a little bit more green right here. Oh, I missed this part right here. Add in some greens. Guys, I'm gonna fill this out right now too. Totally didn't see that. So again, because this is a loose watercolor floral, there's really no right or wrong way. You'll see that I'm just kind of going over different parts just to create more depth to it. Adding a little bit more detail to my piece now that I'm pretty much complete with it. Using the same techniques that I have throughout the whole piece. Applying, getting rid of water, tapping my napkin, blending with just water. Using some shadow colors now. Mixing my indigo with my colors. Creating a little bit more shadow to it. I might even just leave like some brush strokes on different parts. And some of them. I feel like doing this just kind of gives your petals that extra pop, a little bit more realism. You'll see I'm not just doing the middle, I'm going towards like the bottom of it as well, using just the very tip of my brush to create this depth. Now this technique of doing my streaks, this will only work when everything is dry. Otherwise it will just kind of blend like with the wet on wet, remember? So you have to make sure that your leaves are completely dry. Your petals are 100% dry before you can add any final details like this to your petal. And I like this. This is turning into a very realistic petal and floral. Adding some towards the base because this is kind of where the majority of it would be. Okay, cool. Maybe we can do that again with the green. Add a little bit of depth to it. Mix a little bit of brown in there. And there we have it. Last details. I'm gonna add a little bit more shadow right here to different points of the wing. Using just water to blend this out because I think I went a little bit too dark. And there we go. Feeling pretty good about this. Gotta blend out this little watermark I have right here. Okay. Dry it off. I want to add just a little bit more depth to the center right here. Just have a little bit more darkness to it. In fact, that's really the only thing that this is lacking. It's just right here in the creases. And while it's wet, I'm kind of tapping it in. And there we have it. Let's take off the masking tape. And my paper was a little long, so I'm gonna go and cut the bottom, and then this painting will be done once I get this tape off. There we go. So I'm gonna go cut the bottom, and then this painting will be done. And there we have it. Thanks for painting with me, guys.